Welcome to the Pinelander Podcast, the official podcast of Pineland, broadcasting to you from an undisclosed location deep inside Pineland, where we discuss faith, family, finances, firearms, freedom, food, and everything else in between, with those who believe in living free and living out the values that made this country free. All right, welcome to the Pinelander Podcast. My name is Paul LaFavor. I'm here with my ranger buddy, Mike Blackburn. Today is February 16th. It's Friday. Just trucking right along with 2024. I'm still trying to get used to writing 2024 and saying that. I think it's, you got to get a few months into it before you kind of settles in. But today is awesome. We get to bring back one of our previous guests onto the Pinelander Podcast. He leads Silent Bridge, a nonprofit organization, does some awesome things around the world. Last time we had Randy on was March of 2023, back in episode 66. So if you guys are out there, you want to, we may not hit everything, all the juicy things that Randy and his organization are doing. You could probably hit that. And then after you hear this one, of course. But Randy, welcome back to the Pinelander, sir.
Oh, thank you, Paul. It's nice to be back.
Well, and the other thing too is Randy's also a fellow podcaster with Shots Fired podcast. Had a chance to listen to some of the episodes there. Great service to the law enforcement community generally, but even people that aren't involved in law enforcement. Really good content on there.
Fantastic. Yeah, there's, some days you lose faith in humanity. It's so easy to do that. You could, you watch the news, you can quickly lose your faith in humanity. And there's certainly some evil things that are perpetrated around the world. Randy knows all about that, the human trafficking. And so it's always good to know there's some sheepdogs out there. There's some people doing the right things, doing good things that Randy is doing with Silent Bridge. But maybe it could be good just to, before we even get going, is just to remind everybody what you do and your heart, where your heart is with all that, Randy.
You bet, Paul. Well, it's like I mentioned in the last podcast we did. By the way, Pineland is close to my heart, as you know. I think Charles Beckwith was the commandant when I went through the Q course, and I was in Nick Rowe's third class. So that tromping around that area is a special place to me. And what you guys are doing is great. You guys influenced me starting the podcast that we have. I just listened to your podcast and what great work you guys are doing. So I got a long ways to go, but it's coming along. But my passion over the years, I think some of the skills that we learned in some of the different schools that we went to, and my experience of traveling around the world, is probably many of the listeners have done, I'm sure, led me to experience, like I explained in the last podcast. It's the name Bridge came from an experience of seeing a girl that was a victim of human sex trafficking right after an incident that happened to her. And she was walking across an old Roman bridge to escape what had happened to her, and I was a witness to it, what had happened. And when she turned to look at me, she looked like my oldest granddaughter, who I just saw 2 days ago, just turned 14. And it just, it hit my heart. I said it was a rock, and like somebody hit me in the head with a hammer or a rock. And I said, this is now my problem, and I'm going to do something about it. So I tried to figure out how to do it. All of us has been through some challenging experiences in our life and challenging schools. I, couldn't quite figure out how to do it. It became it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, to be honest with you, is how to stand up a nonprofit and make it work, to with a goal of saving young women around the world. And our goal is to go to places that other people don't want to go. So our life experiences of the people that are involved with Silent Bridge have led us to some of the most austere places in the world. And I think that God prepared us for this. He gave us the knowledge, skills, and abilities to go to places that other people don't want to go because of either the danger or just the environment is not very welcoming. And so we started looking for these places years ago, and a lot of trips. Some of us had experiences in those locations, some of us didn't. And we identified locations that other people didn't want to be. Other NGO organizations didn't want to go. And we saw that was a place, these were places that sex trafficking blossomed. Not only sex trafficking, but human forced labor, especially children who are under 18 years old. And so we looked at a lot of people were working on not just children, but they were working on adults that were victims of sex trafficking. And we decided we needed to focus and narrow it down to a certain age group. That was the board's decision in group meetings. So our focus is on 12 to 18-year-old girls in some of the most austere locations in the world that are victims of sex trafficking. And that's our passion. It's kind of that explains, I guess, to the listeners a little bit about what got us started and what our focus is.
The last year, The Sound of Freedom came out, and it got a lot of buzz and a lot of people. And thank goodness, I'm glad people went and saw that movie. I think it woke a lot of people up to some of the realities of what's actually happening all around us, not just in the very austere parts that you discussed, but a lot of times these people are brought out from these areas, and of course you end up right here in the U.S. and in various cities here locally. It's sort of the currency, if you will, of the shady, dark part of life. A lot of people don't want to face the reality of, but there's a lot of organizations that are involved in rescuing folks that are involved in got caught up in sex trafficking and what have you. There's a lot of organizations out there. I think one of the things that I really I like about Silent Bridge is your organization is it's a little bit different, and I think it's the part that people are not that familiar with, and though the rescue itself is very difficult, okay, I'm not trying to take anything away from it. It takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of resources, it takes people with certain skills. It can be very dangerous. But once you get the 12 to 18-year-old female that you're talking about, that your group focuses in on, once you rescue this young lady from this lifestyle, really the work begins right there. It's that the rescue is just one part of it. It's a very big part of it. It's a very important part. But I think your organization really focuses on that more difficult, less glamorous part, which is, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah, that's exactly true. That's one of the things we saw when we first started the organization, and we brought some people that are way smarter than me, which is pretty common. But we put everybody in a room and went through everything, and we said, what's missing with this? Like what's missing with the human sex trafficking mitigation efforts? And what we came up with is that most everybody was into the rescue, but nobody was into the aftercare, the treatment of like how do you make them as whole as possible again as you can. And so that's why we created, as I've mentioned before, we created, our model is that we find a country that is austere enough most people don't want to go, that sex trafficking is blossoming there. We find the right location to set the safe haven. We find a place to rent the safe haven from somebody that we can trust, that's not going to talk about what we're doing, which is a lot of background work. And then we remodel it, we furnish it, we find the staff, we recruit them locally. We have 21 foreign nationals that work for us now full time overseas in different countries. And then we train them. And then after they're trained, we start the rescues, and we do both soft rescues and hard rescues. Our preference is to do soft rescues to allow us to maintain rapport with the local community and law enforcement of that country, so that we don't get exiled from that location. It's a unique balancing act, and every country has as you both know, has unique characteristics. What you can do in country A, you can't do in country B. What you can do in country C, you can't do in country D. So yeah, you're exactly right. And you're right, that movie brought out a lot of what, the challenges of sex trafficking around the world. And it made people, it increased awareness, situational awareness of what's going on for people. So I'm happy for that. They have a different focus than we do. Our focus again is the aftercare. And as we get more into the podcast, I can talk about some people, some other folks we've been teaming with, and they're influencing us, and I think we're influencing them on how we create an accreditation process. Because as you travel around the world and see people that are trying to do this, you see there's no real standardization of how to make these people, these young women whole again, and what techniques work and what don't, and how do you share that with other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how someone listening to this, you may not even had awareness of the prevalence of human trafficking. That's something we talked about in the last podcast back almost a year ago. But could you just tell us, just kind of give us a little bit of metrics, or like how prevalent is that human trafficking? Because I do want to circle back around to what you were just talking about as far as your strategy for taking them out and how you make them whole again. But just if you could just tease out some of those metrics.
Well, and even on top of that, Randy, if you could, I'm not sure, but I would imagine with the situation with the open borders down south that it's probably even getting worse. I can't imagine it getting any better.
Oh, it's phenomenal. So if you just go CONUS based, just look at the U.S. Just an example, how many people drive by a truck stop every day? At every truck stop you drive by in the United States, I can guarantee there's sex trafficking going on. The handlers are dropping the girls off. They're using backside websites. Truck drivers are calling in. Truck drivers are good people, right? But there's always people that aren't. But truck stops are a place for this to happen, and it happens all over the country. That's in the U.S. And the handlers drop these women off. There's a phone number that the people can call. The girls end up in the truck for 10 minutes and they're gone, and they made a little bit of money, and they're handled. That's just part of it. That's just the thing that people don't see. They drive by every day. If you go on the border, we did it. We went on the border down in San Antonio, and we were up in Terrell County in the western part of Texas this last year, doing some research, and it was just amazing what's going on down there. There's very little, almost non-existent help there for women that have been trafficked coming across the border, and it's huge. The cartels are moving them across the border. They're bringing them across in a lot in some very austere locations that don't have a lot of manning there. And once that woman is across the border, she's linked up with somebody that's on the northern side of the border. And then they go through usually a series of safe houses in different states, and they'll end up where they want them to be. And they have to work off their transportation fees by the mules from the cartels. And if people have to do is, the internet's a powerful tool. Look on the internet and type in, human sex trafficking ring busted. You'll see where these women came from. They came from South and Central America. Some of them there's Ukrainian women that ended up in this environment in the United States that are being arrested. You know, the federal side of it is HSI has a special unit that deals with sex trafficking both in the U.S. and works with overseas with Interpol, et cetera. And it's a huge problem in the U.S. Now you start transitioning over to overseas. Of course, Africa, you know, horrible poverty in Africa, and you got about three choices in some countries in Africa right now. You know, you can become radicalized if you're, you know, up in Timbuktu or Mopti or Sever, or in Chad or in Burkina Faso. You can become radicalized and get an AK-47 and go out and fight against people and pick out whatever woman you want from a village, or you can, you know, sell yourself on the street. That's what some women do, and eventually they get rolled up by some trafficker and move somewhere else. You move to the Philippines. I talked to the lady that was responsible for the country of the Philippines for human sex trafficking, and it was not that many months ago. She told me that there was 932,000 documented women that were sex trafficked overseas from the Philippines last year. That's almost 1 million women. Yeah.
I'm just trying to take in that number right now.
Yeah, that's a huge amount.
That is, I mean, so just when I hear numbers like that, and in light of the porous characteristic of our border, you got to know that this is coming to us. It's coming to a town near you. The awareness of this. I mean, you got to be. We got to keep our head on a swivel. And I think when I hear something like this, it's like, hey, not only awareness, it's prevalence, but you know, I can make a difference, and you're certainly making a difference. And just going back to that one thing, you're talking about a big aspect of what you do is not only is recovering these young women and these people, but you know, putting them back together. You know, and I think that's something we just kind of forget about. You know, I mean,
Well,
we just think, you know, you get them, then they're good, but it's kind of like we've talked about before, is that, you know, the body keeps the score, the trauma is still there.
Sometimes this is, correct me if I'm wrong, some of this times this is like generational too, isn't it, Randy? I mean, sometimes these young ladies almost grow up in this sort of industry. Maybe their parents, maybe their mothers. I mean, sometimes I'm just imagining some of these ladies that you rescue, I mean, really need some work.
Oh, they need a lot of work, and I mean that's what. So you see in the movies and the shows that are done about this. Not to belittle any of that, but they really don't show the aftermath of after they're recovered, and they've lived. Most of these young women and the women have lived in a life of insecurity. You know, they've been groomed, you know, beaten and put in a room for 2 or 3 days and beaten continuously to submit to what they're going to be exposed to the rest of their life. And you know, it's just a you know, it's a horrible environment that most of them been in. So you see the movies and you see the people they're rescued, but what happens afterward? Well, for us, for example, one of the first things we got to get them medical care. Some of them haven't had dental care their entire life. Some of them have not had a medical checkup their entire life, and so we got to get them in. And you can imagine the injuries, the medical care, just that part is one of the first things. The second thing is trying to determine through the staff and their interaction with them to couple them with a staff member that is like almost a one-on-one person they can always go to. And it can be different because it's like, you know, how human personality is. You know, I gravitate towards you, or I gravitate towards this person. And when we figure that out, then that becomes their kind of their mentor, if you will, to kind of help them get through this process. And some of the girls are young. I mean, you know, one girl we rescued from that was at a pig farm. You know, it had no parents. It was not only forced labor but other things. I mean, she was just a broken person. I mean, the ride back in the car with her. Yeah, I had to look out the window. I mean, I didn't have a dry eye the whole way. How broken this kid was, and Yeah, so it's and then you got the process about the rebuilding process, and the rebuilding process. One thing we do at each place is traditional dance. Their identity of the country that they're from, because they've lost that in most cases because of the environment they've been in. And so we have dance instructors come in and teach them the traditional dance, and we find that that's an opening thing. We have at one of the safe havens, we have a dog, that came in as a puppy when we first filled that safe haven up. And that is, the kids go out every day, the girls go out, and so those girls are mostly under 16, and they're playing with the dog every day. They got some one-on-one time with the dog. They got the dance instructor comes in, they do singing lessons. I mean, all these things help them try to feel normal again. And I have a saying, everybody's normal till you get to know them, and we just want to make them as normal and feel as normal as possible so they can reintegrate back into society. But most of these girls, we're their family now, and we will be forever. I mean, in most cases, a lot of donors ask me, "What are you going to do with these girls after you have them?" I said, they're mine for life. As long as I'm alive, they're mine. I'm going to take care of them. Then they call me a papa. I talk to them. I talk to them once a month on Zoom calls, and they're all in the room. And some of the smaller safe havens, I talk to them individually. The other ones, I talk to them as a group, and just let them know that they're loved, and that God's in their life, and God's going to watch over them, and we're going to watch over them, and we're going to get them out back into society in some way, shape, or form. For those that can't return to society, we'll take care of them.
Well, my guess is the need is bigger than what you have. So I mean, how are you expanding and trying to keep up with the demand of this? I just, to me, it's got to be frustrating. I think saving someone is wonderful and it's fantastic, but at some point you got to be thinking about all the ones that you're just not able to save and to make a difference. And how are you keeping up with that?
Well, that's the hard part, Mike. I mean, it's that I had to turn down taking some kids here a couple times in the last month because we're just out of it's only so much resources and funding, and
space.
So it's space, and I just had to have some carpenters come in and build 6 new bunk beds at one place because you can't. It's so austere. It's at 14,500 feet elevation, that safe haven, and you can't just go down to this local store and buy a bed. So I had to have carpenters come in and build it. Local carpenters cut the trees down. You mill the trees and you build the beds, and then you get mattresses. We can get there by a caribou, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and we have a footprint now, pretty substantial one in the Asia Pacific region, one in Europe, and now South and Central America. And as I said, we got a team going to Africa next week. And we just had about our 10th or 11th team come out of a war zone. They've been in there 10, 11 times now. We have a safe haven there, and they're been dodging cruise and missiles for the last couple of months off and on. So it's been a tough environment for them, but they're doing a great job, and courageous people. I'm really proud of what they're doing there. But yeah, it's a challenge. There's such a huge need out there. And I don't know. We just I just pray every day, especially the first of every month, that I can take in 5 or 10 more. That's what we try to do. And we're still trying to. We want to stay in our founding theme, which when you're trying to get donations, it's a challenge because if you show a whole bunch of videos and pictures and all that of the kids, it tears at people's hearts, but I also want to protect their identity. So, our founding theme was, it's not, that's why we don't say what our names are, who we are, what we've done, on the website. We don't, it's not about us, it's about the young women who were subjected to human trafficking. And so we remind ourselves that at every board meeting, we read a statement about that when it becomes about us and not about the girls, then, we're not really, people aren't welcome on our board. So, or in the projects.
Well, let me ask this, because that is true. I know that about you personally. You and I have known each other for quite a long time now. But talk about your team a little bit. What kind of people do you have on the team, and what kind of specialties do they have?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we just were able to get enough money to hire a donation manager recently, and that person came from an organization that she did an extremely good job of raising money. She's had a background in testifying against sex traffickers around the country, in some specific locations, and she's been immersed in that for years. But she also has a strong background in donations, and so we brought her on. She's doing a phenomenal job. They just redesigned the entire website, and it's going to get relaunched next week, and I'm so impressed with it. It really tells the story without revealing. It's been my challenge, revealing the identity of the residents that we have in the safe havens. The other people, the person that manages country A owns a clothing factory in that country. Him and his father do, and they have just this passion for God, to try to help save these kids. And they run 3 schools that have 100 kids each that have been brought from a area that is been radicalized tremendously. And these are young Christian girls that a lot of their parents have been killed because of the conflict in that region. The person that manages Country B, the country manager I have for there, he was a pretty accomplished soccer player in that area, and he had started a small nonprofit in his country to give back to his people. He lives in New York, and but speaks the language and knows all kinds of people there in Country B. And he just has a passion for this, and he's got a lot of great communication skills. And he's the one that has been able to reach out and find the staff for us, and vet the staff, interview the staff, and they're just doing he's done a phenomenal job. Staff member we have over in the European region, Country C, he's a retired police officer from the United States and a retired chief in the United States. And he lives outside of the war zone and manages the teams going in and out of out of the war zone. He's doing a phenomenal job there. He has a strong technical background, which is we're bringing technical capabilities to bear, as I mentioned before we started the podcast, on the traffickers. That's kind of the person that we have for the D region, if you will, kind of the south of the border. That person was worked for, he actually ran the fugitive apprehension unit for the Border Patrol for years, if I remember everything right on that. And he is doing a phenomenal job traveling around and identifying locations we put safe havens. Yeah, that's just kind of a little bit of background. The people that are on the board are from places that all 3 of us have had a footprint in. The majority of them, a couple of them are business owners. Our major donor for Country C, she is the heir to 2 large corporations, and last year she donated about $1.1 million to the causes in Country C, and she's a phenomenal donor and a phenomenal lady. She writes a lot of articles for New York Times and Wall Street Journal and all kinds of things, and just about human trafficking and keep it visible to the population, not only in our country but overseas too. So that's kind of a flavor of the people. Some people have a lot of experience doing rescues, and they have. We've partnered with another organization that is a bunch of current law enforcement officers that take 2 weeks off at a time, and they're going to become our arm for doing the hard rescues. So there's a separation between when we do a hard rescue and what our people do in the triage piece and taking care of them.
Well, it sounds like you've got a really wide variety of talent and people from all walks of life, which is fantastic.
That's impressive.
Because it's just nice having people come in from different backgrounds, different experiences, because they really enhance the overall team. Because they bring that talent with them. So sounds like you've got a nice little mix there. But you're always growing, aren't you, Randy?
Oh, it's become it's a full-time job besides trying to raise money. I mean, it really is a full-time job. And I learn every day about something unique in the country. One country is predominantly Hindu, and so there's certain things we can and can't do there. There's certain things that want to be said and not said. I learned a lot about donors. Some donors call and say, "Well, I'll donate money, but you have to teach this to the girls." And I said, "Well, it's kind of hard to walk into a country that all the girls are Muslim and tell them you got to." And plus, with the population that's around the safe haven, you know how that can turn bad real quick. And so people ask, like, are we a faith-based organization? It's just we are, but we have members on the board that are members of all faith, and that's been a huge benefit to us in so many ways in these countries, because there's a lot of things I thought I knew that I didn't know, about certain religions and certain cultures, and these people have been just amazing at educating me on what will work and not work. And it's the things we learn in the military, a course of action analysis, and we look at, so we do course of action A, B, or C, and these people give us their input. Well, you got to consider this. You got to consider this from the local population. You got to consider that what the repercussions may be if you start doing this in the area. An example, not too long ago, I went through again the largest brothel in the world. It's about 8,000 population in the daytime, and at night it blossoms of 15 to 18,000.
Wow.
The line of people, but walking through that brothel, it's a place that most people that look like me don't go, and it was very unusual for them to see me in there, and they go through that place and to see, it's a city. I mean, it's a walled-in city, and to see the young girls that are in there, what they're going through. They tried to hide a lot of those girls, but some of them popped out, and I saw them, and of course they went right back in because they weren't supposed to be on the street. But and then one of the most moving experiences I had there was seeing two women. It's one of my favorite pictures, actually. Seeing two women that were in their 70s that had been in that brothel since they were 13 or 14. Probably they ran away from being a child bride, ended up in that brothel. And they're missing almost all their teeth. They're not useful inside the brothel. So they spend the day kind of wandering around, begging to get food or clean water or something like that. It's another part of human trafficking we don't see. There's no senior citizen home for these women. And I'll send you that after this. I'll send you that the picture of me with these two women. It was just heartbreaking, to see them.
We don't ever think about the post brothel time. What happens to these ladies in retirement? We never. No one ever thinks about that.
Yeah, so you get the children, and you got so one of the goals we're trying to do is also develop a program where we can take, because a lot of people go like, well, they could have just left. You can't leave this place. There's guards at every door. You're not getting out of there.
Right.
And if you get out of there, they're going to find you, and you're going to be in trouble. And so, but we're trying to negotiate, and that one and another one where we can have a plot of land right outside, so they're not gone, because that's really their community. And but where we can take care of them, it'd be a small senior care home, and I can't even imagine what these ladies were like. I remember after hugging them, somebody commented to me, said that they're considered untouchables, and they couldn't believe that I did that, and these ladies were just, the picture's actually them crying because I hugged them, they haven't had probably anybody show that they cared for them for many, many years.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't want to miss the chance to say that what's motivating you to do this is the love of Christ. That's why you're doing what you're doing, to be His hands and feet, to go out and do that. I mean, I hear that, and I see that in what you're saying, and I know you interact with the other organizations, but that's at the heart of what you're doing.
It is. I mean, it's there is. I mean, I have to try at the first of every month. I have to trust in God that there's going to be the capability to take care of these, continue to take care of these kids. And sometimes it doesn't look like that's going to happen, and then all of a sudden somebody comes out of the woodwork and boom, it just happened this month. Actually, it was pretty close to having a couple of challenges, and just the last minute, God provides. He has, lit the path for me in this, and it's made me closer to God. I mean, really has, because, you just have to trust, when you're going to go on a journey like this, you got to trust, and that it's going to be provided. But the reward that I get, I mean, I tell people, like, I had my dream house in Texas. I built this, I wanted to build this house for years, and I built this house down there, and it was on the water. It was a gorgeous place, it had a dock, everything. I had my Texas truck in the garage. It was my second home, and I was going to spend my time down there. And I went on this trip into a country, austere location. I come back and I go, like, I'm flying back. It's 23 hours, 24 hours of transit. I get back to the house. I hadn't been there for a month or two, and I take the old truck out, the new truck out, and this realtor pulls up and says, "Hey, I got a couple wants to see your house, and it's not for sale." He comes inside, and I said, "Well, I'll show it to you." So they come inside, and they look at the house, and he says, "You don't want to sell it?" I said, "No." So the couple really likes it. I said, "No, it's not for sale." So they leave, and I go, "You know what? I don't need this damn house. I should sell this house, and I could come up with the money to do the safe haven in Country B." And right then, the realtor knocks on the door again and said, "I went and showed him another house. I'll give you $100,000 over market value." I said, "Sold." That was, God in action there, And you know what? I haven't, Paul and Mike, I haven't missed that house one bit, because every month I'm Zoom calling to these different countries, and I'm talking to these girls that are, the youngest one we got, I think, is 7 now. And well, actually, we have one that's 2 months old. I can tell you the story about that. But I'm looking at these girls, and they're talking to me. They're happy. They're smiling. They're sending me videos of them learning traditional dance and singing. They called me and they had a Zoom call and wished me happy birthday recently. That is way more reward than that house.
Hey, Randy, I got to sneak in here. Two scriptures just came to my mind. I think it just resonates in what you do. The first is, of course, James 1:27, and you're living that out. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. And so, by extension, you have those widows, those orphans, those who are made, they're put into trouble, and you're definitely going out and in harm's way into these difficult reached places to do that. And then the other one you just said is, of course, that's my favorite parable in Matthew chapter 13, verse 44. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid, and for joy over it he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. And I see that you saw the treasure of those lives, of those children, of those troubled ones, and you sold your dream to gain this treasure. And so that is beautiful. Fantastic.
And Randy, on another note, how does somebody donate to the Silent Bridge? I mean, do they go to the website? I mean, what's the easiest way to keep you rolling and keeping the team doing what they need to do?
Yeah, they can go to the website, silentbridge.org. Assuming that this podcast is going to be come out next week or something, by then the new website should be up. It's going to be oriented differently so that you can donate by country. So somebody that has heard this podcast, they'll actually see the countries we're operating in then, and they can donate by country, because some people may want, they want to donate to Africa, or they want to donate to, the Asian Pacific area. They want to donate to the European region where this is going on, because and so it'll be a little bit easier for them, and they'll see what we're doing in those areas. Nice. They won't see the actual location of the safe haven. And some people too may, we're going to be doing engagement trips this next year, and we have some people go on an engagement trip actually in February. And so on an engagement trip, they pay their airfare and their lodging and stuff, but we provide all the support mechanism. We vet them, and they're with they're with our staff and our team the whole time. They get to actually see what's going on, in these locations. The operation. Yeah.
See the good that you're doing. Yeah, that's fantastic.
And that's important. I think that people know where where their money's going to. It doesn't take a lot of money. I mean, one place, the girls that we send them to a private school. It's not the kind of private school you would think, but it's a private school in that area. And it's a well-run school, but the facilities are not very good, but the teachers do an excellent job. It costs us $400 a year for them to go to school, almost completely, 12 months a year. I mean, that's a small amount. If they want to support a teacher, like country B, you can't go to the capital, is where all the colleges are. You can't go there from an outlying area and really do well in college unless you speak English, and there's not very many English teachers. So we provide English teachers to these small villages that have 200 or less students, and that English teacher spends an hour in each class, 1 through 6, and so that they have a basic understanding of English by the time they get ready to go to college. Because in that country, you start going to college at about 16 versus the U.S. at 18. So, and those people become our eyes and ears too for girls that are becoming victims of sex trafficking. So I hope that helps a little bit. I did want to share one story, if we have a second, just real quick.
Yeah, please.
One of the girls something I never expected to have to deal with, that we rescued last year, was last May. She started showing signs after we rescued her, and she was 13 when we rescued her. She was raped by a 28-year-old man, and but the staff, through the outreach program, the classes we've been given to the local police, that rapport was developed, and they worked with us, and he's been arrested. He's going to prison for 12 years for raping a 13-year-old. But then the thing I had was, now I had this, she's pregnant. What do we do with this?
Yeah, right.
With this baby, and we went through this process, and we so the staff developed a nursery. We funded it, and the baby lives there. We hired a nanny so she continued going to school. And all the girls that are under 16 at that safe haven, they've all surrounded this young girl to help her. They've all become, sisters. So the baby girl just turned 2 months a couple of days ago. So, but anyway, wanted to share that story. It's never thought we'd have a little baby in one of the safe havens, but we do.
Well, I think one can even, I'm not an expert or anything like that, but you'd almost think that would be almost like therapeutic. I mean, it's a sense of family where everyone can get in there and help with the raising and the nurturing and all that. So I think a lot of that probably is helping them also kind of adjust back to normalcy.
Oh, it's amazing, Mike. It really is. I hope that one day you guys can go on one of the engagement trips or something and come over and see a couple of the places.
Yeah, we
It's
gotta we gotta link up at
Yeah,
some point.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
let's absolutely plan on that.
yeah, it's. Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said it's life changing. It's changed my life, that's for sure.
Well, there's no doubt about that. Let's, if we can, I'd like to transition for the little bit of time we have left, kind of into the podcast. Talk about what you're doing over there at Shots Fired.
Well, yeah, thanks. This idea kind of came out of I had I worked in law enforcement for a long time, and after my military career, so and I had been around a lot of officers, had been wounded in the line of duty, or had been in shootings and been traumatized by the media, and the local city councils and stuff like that. And I was like, I said, I all this trauma I've seen with these girls, and I said, what about the trauma that's happened to cops, especially after all the riots that happened several years ago? And I was on the forefront of those riots, protecting media for 6 months, at the biggest parts of the protest. I got tear gassed like 37 times.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, I want to do something. So I knew so many people that have been either wounded in the line of duty or whatever, and or been in shootings. And so I said, well, why don't we start a podcast so we can tell the story? Because, I mean, I'm trying to work on a book called False Narrative about, law enforcement in the United States. And I said, this will help me do that, number one, and maybe I can do some good to these people, for these really great people that got injured in the line of duty. And basically, it's a pretty easy format, simple format. Is that we want them to tell a story about who they are in the beginning. That's kind of the first segment. What was your background? What caused you to become a police officer? The second part is, what was your experience at the police academy? What was it like? What was the best lesson you learned? And then what was your experience with your field training officer when you went out and became actually were on the streets for a while and under the supervision of a mentor? And what was the best lesson you learned? And then we transition into the actual incident, the event. And from that event, we just let the person tell their story about what happened. Why did they, what was the decision that made them discharge a weapon? What led up to it? And then we go into what impact did it have on them and their family long term. And we've all heard of the iceberg model, probably, the 10% above the water line, your current conscious level, and 90% below the water line. Those are the slides that are in your subconscious about events that have happened in your life, good or bad, and how did you survive them. And we do a lead at towards the before they tell the event that happened to them. And it's striking every time I tell them a story. So you're driving the coast, you're in a car with your best friend, you guys are gotten off work and you're going to go to the coast for the weekend and meet with some other police officers. And as you're driving, a elk comes out in the middle of the road. You hit it, the elk comes through the windshield. It kills your best friend. I said, you would remember the date, the time, the name of the paramedics that showed up, the ambulance number, the name of the police officer that showed up, how many miles were on your car, when you last had your oil change. You remember the last words your best friend said before he succumbed to his injuries. And then we have them talk, and it's like that. I mean, they remember, and this is like shootings that happened 20 years ago. They remember every single detail. And we've gotten some great responses to the podcast. We've had some police academies are using it now as required reading for their police officers going through the academy. Because, most officer involved shootings happen at 10 feet or less. And we're seeing more and more police officers killed in the United States. And a lot of that's because of hesitation. Nobody wants to end up in prison,
Right.
and so hesitation kills, as we all know. And making the right decision at the right time is important. So we're hoping that the podcast will educate people new police officers on that, and educate the public on what cops go through. It's not they just pulled the trigger and they went and put took their uniform off, went home, and it was a great day for them. That's not what it is, and that's what this podcast does. It explains that there's a huge impact and injury to the officer, the family, and in some cases, obviously, the community.
Yeah, I think all this. I think that podcast for me, having not lived in that the situations, but it kind of brings that the perspective, the law enforcement perspective. A lot of people see the law enforcement as not needed, and they don't. Obviously, this is completely irrational to defund the police. They don't think through those things, and I think whenever I've heard a few of these podcasts about the experiences from law enforcement, is you see things, obviously from their perspective, and they're dealing with, they're not responding to really good stuff. They're responding to a robbery, and domestic violence.
We're calling, we're calling for help.
They're seeing sinful people doing sinful things, and I think that's so that is another aspect of that where it's an awareness. Obviously you're going into harm's way in the difficult areas in both things we just talked about, but you're also bringing a lot of awareness. Yes. And that's what's awesome is maybe somebody's out there they don't even think through these things, but there's sexual trafficking being going on in our country and worldwide, and there's these men and women in blue are at war with fallen humanity doing some really bad stuff. We're trying to hold this thing together. So I think that's fantastic. Both aspects of those things. I think you can learn a lot, and you can be informed just by listening to one of those podcasts and kind of get you a new perspective.
Well, I hadn't even thought about the fact that it's much more dangerous now. So
yeah, it's people don't want to who would want to be a police officer?
Yeah, you have the liability issues, which
you got to really want to serve, man.
You do. And
you got to have a calling.
And it's just listening to the podcast. It's you're right. When the police officers are recounting the experience, it gets into incredible detail. And these were, like you said, shootings that took place a long time ago. So they made a huge impact. But thank God that we still have men and women that are willing to go do that job.
Praise God for that.
It's a tough job. It's getting tougher. A lot of scrutiny, and I'm glad you're doing the podcast because I think that's what we have to do. I think we have to especially educate the population. A lot of misinformation out there on just how difficult this job is, and thank God there's people out there doing it. So thank you for starting that podcast. I certainly enjoyed listening to the episodes that you've posted already. How often are you doing that podcast?
Yeah, we're trying to do them once a month, but of course I'm gone sometimes a month at a time for other work to help fund everything else. So, but we're trying to do them once a month. But we've got 6 guests lined up right now coming on. And they're one's known as the cop who ruined Christmas because he had Santa Claus in the back of his car when he was going from grade school to grade school when he got in a shooting, and it was about, I think, 30 or 40 minutes into the shooting, and state police were there, and I think some state trooper came up, tapped him on the shoulder, and goes, "You realize you got Santa Claus in the back of the car?" And he totally forgot about it, and of course, Santa Claus couldn't go to any more events at the grade schools because of the experience he had in the back of the car as there was bullets flying through the windshield. So that'll be a great podcast, and but yeah, that's what we're doing. There's some just great people. One of the ones that there's a bunch of them, they all touched me, but one of them was a guy named George, and he got shot in the face in a pawn shop, right in the head, point blank, and he chased the guy down the street. They exchanged, I don't know, 15, 20 rounds, and finally he had so much blood in his eyes after 3 or 4 blocks of chasing this guy in this gun battle. And this happened in a city I worked in, actually, so I knew the whole incident very well. a tow truck driver who was a Marine that had been in Desert Storm, saw the whole incident happen on the street, was rolling down the street. He jumped out and said, "Can I help you?" And George said, "I had to trust somebody because I couldn't see." And he says, the guy what's the condition of the guy? And he says, "He's on his stomach and I can't see the gun." And he said, "Well, just tell me if he gets, turns towards me or whatever." And then cover arrived, but that, young Marine corporal, probably helped save his life. So, they're great stories.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And guys, if you just if you didn't catch that, it's silentbridge.org, and then Shots Fired is the name of the podcast. Wonderful content. If your heart went out for these young women, these girls, in some instances that are drawn into this evil net overseas, and you want to get involved, you can go to the website silentbridge.org. There's opportunities for you to volunteer and to give, and so I'd encourage you to go to that. And for the work you're doing over there, Randy, my heart goes out to you too, man. I know that you carry those people in your heart, and that's why you're doing what you're doing. So I appreciate that, and I see that as godly work. And may the Lord bless the work of your hands that you're doing. God bless you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. And thank you too, Mike, for your time. I appreciate both of you.
Yeah, thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your busy day, and we'll definitely be talking about maybe doing one of these trips with you later on down the road.
We'll haul at you later there, sir. God bless you.
Yes, sir. God bless you too. You guys have a great day and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Pinelander Podcast. If you enjoy our unique content, please consider supporting our sponsors. Soft News provides special operations news from around the world. It's where Paul and I go to keep abreast of what's going on within the SOF community. Check them out at soft.news. American Partisan. It's the vanguard movement of Western civilization. Be sure to check them out at americanpartisan.org. And, of course, Blacksmith Publishing. We've been serving the warrior class since 2013. They have great titles written for warriors, by warriors. If you're looking for excellent reference material or just want to enjoy a great novel, be sure to check out the bookstore. Or if you enjoy hanging out with warriors, come spend some time with us in the G-Base over at the Pinelander Podcast. All that's at blacksmithpublishing.com. Until our next meeting, stay mentally and tactically smart, physically and spiritually strong, and socially astute. To each other we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. May God continue to bless Pineland.